this, y'all? Let's go ahead and worship together.
Sing, and for everything.
Here we go.
Do it.
Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. While shepherds kept their watching, Jesus silent flocks by night. Behold, throughout the heavens there shone a holy light. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. While the shepherds feared and trembled, and low above the earth rang out the angel chorus that hailed the Savior's birth. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Down in a lowly manger, the humble Christ was born. God sends us salvation, that blessed Christmas morn. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born.
Good evening, everybody. I'm super excited to be able to talk to you guys tonight and share what's on my heart. Kind of what I want to do tonight, a little bit different, is kind of just read a passage with you guys. As we read the passage, just take some time to break it down, talk about what's going on, and give a good perspective on how that can affect our lives and how we can apply it to our lives. And the passage we're going to be talking about tonight, there's one perspective that's very common. If you grew up in church, you probably heard it quite a bit, especially in Sunday school. This story is very common. But the one thing about when you read the Bible is sometimes the more you read it, the more new ideas come, and then your eyes are open to other things. This week, reading this passage and in my study Bible, I learned a new perspective on this passage and a way I can apply it to my life. So I want to share that with you tonight as well. So there'll be two perspectives, but I think they tie together well. And so tonight, before we get started, let's just pray, and then we'll dive into it. Lord, just thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you for, even though it's different than usual, just being able to come together and read and learn. I pray with you that you will open the teens' hearts, let them be willing to learn and grow and serve you with their lives. I pray that they have good holidays coming up. In your name, amen. All right, so we're going to be reading in 1 Kings chapter 19. And we're going to go with verse number 1, so I'll give you a second to get there, but a little bit of backstory. When we talk about Elijah, and right before this chapter, Elijah challenged the prophet of Baal in this area. There's 450 of them. They're like, hey, look, I'm going to challenge you guys. I'm going to challenge you guys to build an altar to your god Baal, fake god Baal, and I want you to pray to him to burn your offering, your sacrifice, and then I will build an altar and sacrifice to my God, the true God, and I'll ask him to do the same, and we'll see whose God answers. And so Baal's prophets built an altar and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, and nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. Not even a little spark. Nothing. And Elijah kind of mocked him. He goes, "Is your God not paying attention? Is he busy? Is he sleeping? Is he even aware of what's going on?" And so he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna show how good my God is." He goes, "You know what? Build a trench around mine, a big trench, all the way around mine. And now and there was a drought going on during this time too. He goes, let's take some water, which is really valuable right now, and everyone grab a bucket and we'll just dump it on there, make it really wet." So they took water and they dumped it on Elijah's altar, and to the point where it's like, man, even if we wanted to set it on fire, we probably really couldn't. And he goes, "Now watch this." And he prayed to God, and God sent fire from heaven and burnt up his offering. Just an amazing miracle of God, and showing his power and his might. And they're like, "Wow, that's amazing. He is God." But the thing is, they want to turn from their ways. They still wanted to worship Baal. And so one of the things that Elijah did was to try to help the people turn away from the sin, was to discard or get rid of the 450 prophets. He killed them. And the queen of this area, Jezebel, was not too happy about that. She was actually very angry. So this is where we kind of pick up, is in verse 19. King Ahab told Jezebel everything that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "May the gods," little g, fake gods, "punish me and do so severely if I don't make your life like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." So she's saying, may I be punished severely by my fake gods if I don't kill you by tomorrow. That's a pretty serious, threat. It's like, I'm the queen, I have armies, I have all these people. It's like, I'm coming after you. So I think everyone in the situation would have the same instinct. I'd be afraid. I would want to get away. And so that's what he did. He ran away. In verse 3 it says, "Then Elijah became afraid and immediately ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba that belonged to Judah, he left his servant there. But he went on a day's journey into the wilderness. He sat down under a broom tree and prayed that he might die. He said, 'I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I'm no better than my fathers.' Then he laid down and slept under the broom tree." So we'll take a pause there. So he became afraid that he was going to die. So he ran. And when he ran far enough, he prayed that God would kill him. That doesn't make much sense, does it? You're afraid to die, so you run away just to ask somebody else to kill you. There's just no logic there. And I think that's just a great example of us as humans, when fear overcomes our lives, how we react. Sometimes when fear comes into our lives, we tend to do something that makes no sense. I'm so afraid to lose my life, I'm going to ask somebody else to take care of it, is one of the craziest things to ever say or ever think of. And we might do that in our lives. We might be afraid when a big test comes up. You know what? Hey, in order to avoid failing this test, I'm just going to pretend to be sick and not show up and not take the test and fail still. Whereas if you just showed up and you at least had a chance to pass the test, but if you skip the test entirely, you'll never pass because you're afraid to fail. It's sometimes fear takes over and just makes us do some dumb things that make no sense. And that's what Elijah did. He ran away because he was afraid to die, and yet he asked God to kill him. And then he's like, you know what? I just need some rest. I need to sleep. And continuing in verse 5, it says this: "Suddenly an angel touched him. The angel told him, 'Get up and eat.' Then he looked, and there at his head was a loaf of bread baked over hot stones and a jug of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. Then the angel of the Lord returned for a second time and touched him. He said, 'Get up and eat, or the journey will be too much for you.' So he got up and ate and drank. Then on the strength from that food, he walked 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. He entered a cave there and spent the night." So we see here, he's afraid, he ran, he wants to die, he's had enough, is what it seems like. But yet God's like, look, I'm still your God. We just did this big thing to show who I am to the false prophets, and yet you're not coming to me for when you need me. And so I'm going to take care of you. Here's some food, here's some water. Eat, get get nutrition, build your strength. You know what? I'll do it again. Hey, here's more food and more water. You got a long journey ahead of you. You need to make sure you got enough food in you, enough energy. So when Elijah arrives to his destination, the mountain of God, we have this really interesting passage that comes up, which most of you will now recognize what the story is. Suddenly the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of armies, but the Israelites have abandoned your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I am alone, and they are looking for me to take my life." Then he said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the Lord's presence." At that moment the Lord passed by. A great and mighty wind was tearing at the mountains and was shattering cliffs before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire there was a voice, a soft whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Suddenly a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here?" So usually if God, and you see this in the New Testament too, if Jesus said something once and then he said it again, it's usually something important. So here we see the beginning of this interaction between him and God. He asks him, "What are you doing here?" And at the very end, he reiterated, "What are you doing here?" And that's one thing we need to ask ourselves. What are we doing here? What's our purpose? What's going on? And in 2020, who knows? It's been such a hard and confusing year. We started out 2020 with such promise. We had goals, we had plans, we had a vision of what this year could be for us. And then one thing after another, and COVID came and has changed our lives forever. What we thought we knew was going to happen never happened. What we thought our lives were going to look like has completely been turned upside down. Things we took for granted are now gone. We've missed out. I think of the people who, the high school who graduated last year, most of them, a normal high school graduation, most of them didn't even get to finish the last couple months of school. There are people who partake in sports who had to miss sports seasons because of COVID-19. Holidays missed, festivals missed. My family goes to big ticket festival every single year. And one of the highlights of my year, and we didn't get to go. There's so many things that have changed because of COVID-19. And it's hard because we wonder, it's like, okay, it's been such a difficult year. Families, some of your parents might have lost their jobs during this time. And we wonder, where is God in this? Why is God allowing this to happen? People getting sick, people losing their jobs. I can't go to school and be with my friends. I can't be in my sports. I can't even be in school. I have to sit at home in front of a laptop or an iPad or something all day. It's like, well, what's the plan? What's the purpose? Where is God through all this? And we begin to wonder, why am I here? What are we doing here? What's the point? And then this is where the passage where I think we have two perspectives. The first one I think most of us heard. And the first perspective is this. Yes, there's winds, earthquakes, and fires in life. So things happen. It's life. It's not going to be fair. It's not going to be perfect. Bad things happen. Even to good people, even to people who follow Christ. Things happen. And sometimes it's hard to find God in those times. We don't hear him, we don't see him, and we're so confused. But we need to remember to slow down, take some time, because sometimes through the biggest trials, God is working his biggest blessings into our lives, and we just don't know it yet. Because we're not listening to that still small voice, that whisper that's so quiet that we have to stand still and focus on our relationship with God, that we might miss it. We have to remember that God doesn't always work in the big, flashy ways. Sometimes he does it quietly. God's not always boom, flash. And I think that's the first perspective we have to remember. One, we need to slow down and remember to take time to be with God and reflect on our relationship with him. But the other perspective, which I think a lot of it has to do with how we go about our lives has to change. The Bible I have is a Charles Spurgeon study Bible, and I know many of you have never probably heard of Charles Spurgeon. Brand's probably laughing that I'm bringing Charles Spurgeon up to you guys, but Charles Spurgeon was a pastor way back in the day. Very renowned pastor, had some great thoughts, and really was a great man of God. And while I was reading this passage, he has some commentary on the verse 12, and it's a perspective, to my recollection, I have never heard before, and I thought it was very interesting, and just want to share it with you guys too. So this is words by Charles Spurgeon, his thoughts on this verse. And it says, "And after the fire there was a voice, a soft whisper." That was the verse. Now here's his thoughts. God here teaches Elijah that although he does use the wind, the earthquake, and the fire when he pleases, these are not his most effective instruments. He does not do his mightiest works by them, but in another way, by a soft voice. Thus the Lord practically said to Elijah, "Gentler means must be tried with these rebellious people. My glory will be promoted among them by other methods than you have ever used, or I have used by you as my servant. I've let them see that I am the Lord and master of terrible forces of nature. I've convinced them that I am a great God who can strike them as much as I please, but I have not thereby won their hearts. Other methods must be used. The soft voice must be tried." This year has been so challenging. My family has just lost a family member to COVID-19. It's been hard on us. I know other families have lost members of their family as well. I know families, lost their jobs. Life is not the same. And it's easy to get defeated in this year, easy to get lost. And it's easy to lose our what our purpose is. What are we doing here? Like I said earlier. But I think this perspective helps. We've lived life one way for so long that we have not considered there's another method, there's another way to live. As a church, we used to meet every Sunday, every Wednesday night, every Sunday night, and throughout the week in groups. And we can't do that anymore. It's no longer an option for this time period, and hopefully that'll change one day and get back to normal. But that's not an option now. And we have to learn to change our methods. And if you're living life right now, you have to learn to change your method on connecting with God. Yes, we used to be able to come to church and worship together as one big group with fire and earthquake in our hearts, and going out and soul winning and door knocking and inviting people to church. But the method has to change now. To reach the people who need Christ, our methods have to change. And that's my challenge to you teens this week. I know you used to invite teens to youth group, but we don't have youth group right now. You used to invite them to the activities, but our activities have been canceled for right now. So you're wondering, how can I get my friends to church? How can I get the Bible to them if there's no church? Well, there's one thing I say almost every single time I teach. It's this: you might be the only Bible they ever read. They might not have a Bible. They might not have the YouVersion Bible app on their phone, but they have you. They have you to be the light. And I think this year has been the best opportunity for us as Christians to show our light to others. I think this year is the greatest opportunity to show Christ to so many people. We've had conflicts between Democrats, Republicans, people who believe in wearing a mask, people who don't. And it doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. What matters is showing the love of Christ, because through that we find truth. Through that we find salvation. So I think this year, you know what? Start living the way Christ intends you to live. Start living the way Christ did. And through that method, though it won't be loud, won't be flashy, but if we live that way, that subtle way, people are going to see that difference, especially the way we react. We react towards love to the people we disagree with. They're going to notice. If we react out of kindness, if we don't want to offend anybody, so if you know someone who's offended or afraid, don't go out of your way to make them more afraid. Show them love. Be gentle towards them. Show them the love of Christ. That's how we reach people during this time. That's how we show the love of Christ. Our methods have to change. So you as a middle schooler, this is what I want you to do. As a method change, you can't invite them to YouTube. Invite them to our live services on Wednesday nights and Sunday nights. Invite them to our Bible studies we have going on. I think we have plans of doing a couple Bible lessons on Zoom or something like that. Invite them to those. We're still going to meet together. It's going to be a little bit different, but the methods change. But God's still in control. God still provides. I love you guys. I can't wait for the day to be all back together. But until then, have a good night.